In this episode, we react to the recent documentary Inside the Manosphere, which provides an interesting look at some of the influencers who are driving the so-called manosphere. Hello, welcome to the Call Like I See It podcast. I'm James Keys, and joining me today is a man whose life is a reflection of a hustler's ambition. Tunde Ogunlana. Tunde, are you ready to give the people some higher learning today?
Of course, man.
All right.
And just for this special show about the Manosphere, I wore my T-shirt for the YouTube audience that says "Awesome like my daughter."
There you go.
To make sure that
you got to send the show to her then.
Yeah, I will. She'll get it.
All right. Now, before we get started, if you enjoy the show, I ask that you subscribe and like the show on YouTube or your podcast app. Doing so really helps the show out. We're recording on April 14th, 2026. And today, we continue our Streaming Between the Lines series and take a look at the documentary Inside the Manosphere, which was released in 2026 and is currently available to stream on Netflix. In the documentary, we follow the filmmaker Louis Theroux as he meets, talks to, and follows several influential people in what is referred to as the manosphere, giving us a look at both the individuals and how they interact with and engage with their significant audiences. Now, to establish a baseline on what we're talking about, the Wikipedia defines the manosphere as a varied collection of websites, blogs, and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny, and opposition to feminism. So just to kind of put everybody on the same page as this manosphere. You're going to hear the term manosphere a bunch. So Tunde, to get us started in our discussion, what surprises you the most about the Inside the Manosphere documentary? Like maybe the over-the-top characters we meet that drive it, or how much of an appetite maybe that there is for this image that the guys project or the messages that they espouse?
That's a good question, man, because I would say this, that I found, because I'm not into this subculture of our greater American story myself, I'm not into the manosphere stuff. So this documentary kind of bringing me in from the outside just made me appreciate how much kind of our culture has changed in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years because of the internet, where everything is like entertainment. Because my first thought was to say, kind of use the word grifting and all that with these guys, but I think that's too simplistic of a breakdown of it. It's not just about they're making money by being online and doing this. I think it's just the way that our culture has gone. There's so many examples of subcultures like this, but this one is interesting because it does involve this manosphere thing, conversations that I think societies have had historically about the role of men, masculinity, when men feel that they are maybe victims in their society, how they express those feelings, so on and so forth. So that to me is what really stood out about this documentary was kind of this lens into that part of manhood, but then the fact that the internet puts this kind of entertainment veneer on it, which I found interesting. So
yeah, interesting.
That's what stood out.
I would say my reaction was the exact opposite. I found this to be incredibly...
That'll make it a good show.
I found this to be incredibly familiar. It reminded me that the bravado, the image, even the messaging to some degree reminded me of 90s hip hop, and the misogyny and all. Like, it was like, oh man, this kind of stuff sells to young boys. Like, hey, I'm super tough, you're super tough, yada, yada, yada. Like so it was very familiar to me in that sense. And some of the messaging though, I thought really stood out because I thought in part they diagnosed a real problem in the world that it is tied to the experience of a lot of young males and a lot of young people generally. But they frame it in the context of the male. But it's really something that can apply more broadly, and that, hey, the system's rigged against you, like things are stacked against you. Like, and if you look at house prices, if you look at how hard it is, relatively to get a job and to get a career, to have a career type job with a lot of, good prospects moving forward, even for college graduates, that's becoming harder. And like, if that stuff is actually happening in the world, and these guys now, I think their solution may be one that actually is counterproductive for a lot of people, because instead of maybe moving people towards working together, to try to work against the forces that are rigging the system. The system rigging thing is very interesting to me, because that message plays well to people who feel like their lot in life isn't what they thought it would be, right? But the people who sell the system is rigged a lot of times never point to the people who are benefiting the most from the rigging. From like, it's like the people that are benefiting the most from the system, somehow they don't get pointed to by the guys in the Manosphere or whatever. Like, it was like, oh yeah, the system is rigged. It's because of women. Yeah, women really have had a really great play in the United States culture for a really long time. The glass ceilings and all this other stuff, and all like that. They're not the people that are like. I see billionaires as the people benefiting from the rigging of the American system. If I'm at a basketball tournament and we find out there's 5 teams and we find out the thing is rigged, I'm not looking at somebody who's lost 3 or 4 games and saying that they're rigging it. I'm like, no, who hasn't lost? Who's winning all the games? They're the ones that are rigging it. So I think that the identifying, yes, the system has been rigged against you, but hey, talk to Robert Reich. He talks about how the system is rigged, but he's actually like, hey, let's actually go after the people that are rigging the system and who are benefiting from it. So to me, the fact that they're really hitting on something that, and then young men at this time of their life, when they want to step into their own and become something that they feel is self-sufficient and something that they feel is masculine and man, and they can't, and they recognize that society's rigged against them. It's like, it's a time when, or it's a message for people at a time when it could be very, very, very influential on them. And, that message, it makes sense to me. It's like, okay, I see this. I get why this is happening.
Yeah, well, the reason why you feel the way you feel, I was going to say, is because I keep being an intellectual, and I keep warning you against all that, because irrationality is where most of us swim, and it's much easier to feel like it's all women's fault if you're told
Or
that.
yeah, or all the immigrants' fault. So, yeah, the immigrants are really winning.
Yeah, so
or all black people's fault. Hold on, yeah, like there's several of them. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so because I'm kind of going down that road, which is going back to the entertainment factor of the internet. We know about things, and we've discussed them in this show, and a lot of people, have seen this in other places too, about things like algorithms. That conflict creates, kind of the eyeballs watching more things, and the algorithms driving people to more conflict for the benefit of, the tech companies and all that. So one thing that the internet has shown us, and this is where you are going, is grievance sells. And so whether it's the racial grievances we've seen, the things like great replacement theory and all that, religious, I mean, I could say, even cable news back 20 years ago with the war on Christmas that Bill O'Reilly brought us, all the way to the college protests, in 2024, 2023, when, those were used as, by some in the Jewish community as a reason why they had a grievance against others. So I think that, and what happens is, and not to pick on any of these groups, we all can feel, and like you said, there's been algorithms sent to Black Americans to make them feel grievance that about their position in society. So I think that there's money to be made by making people feel like victims today on the internet, and this is again a lane where a lot of young men have been driven to believe that the reason why, like you're saying, they're living in their mom's basement at 25, or they don't have a girlfriend because of the way that society has played out and all that, is somehow all the fault of women and not the fault of other factors in society that have got us here. And so, so I think that that's understandable. What I think is also part of this is our leadership in general, culturally. So we have from a political class all the way to entertainment, like these podcast bros and all that. This has been what young men, let's say under 30, have been watching for the last 15, 20 years online. Men telling them how to behave, how to be tough, how to deal with women, all that kind of stuff. And now those young men are turning into grown men, right? And they're affecting the rest of society with their views.
I would add to the piece on the algorithm, because I had the question when I was watching this, like, is this basically, algorithmic proficient con men taking advantage of young men and during a formative or difficult time in their life? Or are they actually meeting a need that is not being met otherwise for these guys, either through the household or through the opportunities available in society. Even if the way they're meeting it, I might say, hey, you might be leading them astray. And what I mean by that is that the recommendations a lot of times, now some of the stuff as far as, hey, you be a more serious person, cool, fine. But be more mean to other people is not something like if the system is rigged, it's almost like an invitation. Hey, why don't you be a part of the rigging and try to keep other people down, as opposed to let's try to take apart the rigging. Like that's kind of the message I feel. And we're going to do it all on our own, and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't think that's the right way to do it. Like if the system's being rigged, then it's being rigged by powerful people. And then to take down powerful people, you need a lot of collaboration, not going on your own. And I'm not going to be the guy that's drawn into trying to join the people that are doing the rigging. But on the algorithmic side, I think that, and we saw this at various times hinted at, but these are people that are very algorithmic proficient in terms of understanding. Now, maybe that's their message anyway, or maybe they are careful, and maybe some part of both, but they're careful to project a certain image in the same way, like I said, with 90s hip hop, is that everybody had to be a gangster. Everybody had to be super tough. Everybody had the women scantily clad, in their videos and stuff, whether that was really them or not, because that was the image that people were drawn to, but what I know about the algorithms that really get this into people's feed and subtly possibly change them, like introduce it to them, bring them along, and then next thing you know, they're all the way in it, is that the algorithms are very good at finding, if the more you interact with it, it finds your insecurity, it finds your obsession, and it plays off it with emotionally driven content. Like that's what the algorithms do. That's how they keep you there, and so I think that this is ultimately drawn or goes back to the fact that society itself is not having easy answers. And I say easy answers on purpose, and I'll touch on that later, for young men in terms of, hey, how can I live a solid life? Like how can I just live a solid life? Like there aren't a lot of easy answers for that. And I think that's a problem, so to speak, that these people, in ways that the algorithms are going to present in a way, this is emotionally driving stuff that's going to allow them to find this as the reason. And as you said, people love to find a scapegoat for their problems, regardless of what the problems are. And I want to kick it back to you, but the thing I want to touch on real quick is what I mean by easy answers is that in any walk of life, this is kind of a philosophy I have on, like, money is the only game where the more of it you get, the easier it is to get more. If you're talking about, exercise, muscle, things like that, if you're talking about anything, it's easy to go from like poor to average. You get in, you go to the gym once, twice a week, you can get to average, pretty easily. It's then a little bit harder to get to above average. But if you want to go from above average to elite, it takes years of focus and dedication and effort. It doesn't become easier to put on muscle and to get in better shape once you're already a world-class athlete. But the money game has been rigged in that way that the more money you have, the easier it is to keep going up the ladder. And so that is a fundamental breakdown in the way that it's unnatural. And so that kind of cascades everything else. But I'm sorry, I know I went long, but let me kick it back to you. Take from whatever you want and go from there.
Now, there's, I think just sticking with the algorithm piece is interesting. That's what I mean. A lot of this swims together, meaning the grievance part. And like you said, a lot of that's a natural human thing for people to look for off ramps as to why their life is in a certain way, other than either their own actions or actions of things that are closer to them. Like it might not be their fault. They were born in a town that doesn't have any jobs, but those are reasons that have their own complexity in nature, and they might not be just because women exist, right? Like that, it's not because of feminism that all this stuff is bad, right? And that to me is where it's interesting, because we've had this conversation differently in different shows in the past. I remember when we talked about some of the racial anxiety we've seen for maybe those in the majority group about being replaced and all that, and the anxiety around seeing things like a black business organization or something. I was saying, like, I've never been bothered by seeing a women's business organization or a women's CEO roundtable or a women's this or that. Like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Like, I understand there's a patriarchy kind of culture. I understand that for women, historically, first of all, they were the last to participate in our democracy, getting the vote in 1920. Think about that. Freed black male slaves were able to vote in this country in 1865, but even white women couldn't participate until 1920. Until the mid 60s, women couldn't open a bank account by themselves in this country. If you were in 1940 and you go to a bank as a woman, they wouldn't open, and they would say, you got to come back with a man.
Hold up. Didn't you just get on me about, I'm looking at this too intellectually? Did you just say that to me?
Yeah.
You read it off all these historical facts?
So hold on. You got to let me paint this circle. I'm doing a weave here, man. This is like you messing up my thing, man. And so remember the weave, the whole thing. And
but I'm the one looking at this too intellectually. I got you.
Wait till I start talking about Arnold Palmer's junk, man. This is gonna get fun. So and Hannibal Lecter too. He's gonna come up somewhere.
As you should.
Now you're messing me up.
As you should.
But no. So because what I was gonna say is that it's a good point, your joke you make, because that's kind of the intellectual way to look at it, right? Just like we would about racial stuff. Well, this group got, they've had systemic, laws were against them, and there's people were getting killed and all this, and they weren't able to, even serve on juries. That was against the law. So all of a sudden, then, everybody's got an equal playing field, and we're just gonna pretend like none of this stuff happened. So the point I'm making is, yes, the irrationality of some men is to believe that it's because of feminism, it's because women got these rights, is why things are so bad in society and men. And look, these arguments are easy to digest, right? You could say that the pickup, the increase in the divorces since the 1960s created more latchkey kids. And that meant that this and that, and the breakup of the family and all this. So my argument would be, so what? Should we ask women to get married in high school again and be married till they're 80 with men that beat them and can't divorce and all this? Like, is that right? I don't think that's right.
Well, that's the prescription that's being offered in many of these places.
Yeah, I know. The whole trad wife thing and just shut up and stay in the kitchen and all that. And it's like, all right, well, if that's where we're going to go with this, then also here's the other thing, the challenge to these young men. You got to take care of that. You got to be responsible. You need to get off the internet and get out of your mom's basement. Go get a job. Go support a woman and a family. Go do that, because that's not easy. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of willpower for a man to do. And so that's the problem. I feel like
we could clip that part and you like, you would be then part of the Manosphere. You would be that rant right there. We could be like, Tunde joins the Manosphere. It would be right there. You captured it perfectly. Let me say something though, because
I'd like for my kids to see that. So let's clip it for them.
I think that your perspective on this is a little clouded, and I think it's for a good reason. You have the confidence now. One, you're older, you're mid-aged, and you've been very successful, and so you have the confidence that, hey, drop me anywhere. This line got dropped in the, and this is a line you hear this in hip hop. You hear it a lot. You drop me anywhere with nothing, I'll get on my feet, in short order, essentially. And you feel that way about yourself. So in your mind, you have the confidence built up from successful life experiences, or something that may be it, or how you were raised, or whatever, or it's just in you. And so you can't look at it with that same level of confidence, because remember, a lot of times people are going to the Manosphere looking for that kind of confidence, and they're looking. So, and one of the ways that confidence is being instilled, again, like I said, a lot of that way with 90s hip hop was, I got the big gun, I got my pants low. That's where my confidence is coming from. And so I see it there too. And so the confidence piece, and feeling like, hey, let me go, let me show up, let me work somewhere, and I can build a life. And like that's something that I think, again, that need is one that needs to be felt. And the irrationality of men is not one. That's not a reason to dismiss this. That's to say, hey, maybe the kind of leadership we put in place needs to do a better job of putting opportunities in place for all people. Once people get denied opportunities, they start finding these little groups, these little niches that they're going to find in, and start throwing stones at the other groups. But if there's opportunity, that the impulse for that is much less. The other thing I'll say is, you talked about the simplicity of the message. Well, simplicity sells, man. Like, that's the thing. I ask any religion, ask them the thousands of years, the simplicity sells. Like, well, why didn't it rain today? Oh, because we didn't kill the virgin. Oh, okay, got it. Like, that's much better than, oh, well, there's a high pressure front, and it's, or why didn't the hurricane go this way? Well, actually, I'll just draw a little black line and say that it was going to go that way. Simplicity sells. And so part of what they're offering here is the simplicity of, you don't need to understand why all of this stuff is going on or why this stuff is happening. It's just, hey, if we just go back to something that you don't remember because you weren't there, then everything will work out for you. So it's a compelling message in that sense. One of the last points I wanted to touch on specifically with you in this, though, dealt specifically about the women that we saw in the documentary. And, like whether, it'd be the girlfriends or the hangers on or the people, like we saw several instances of OnlyFans models in there that were trying to boost their own profile. But what stood out to you about just kind of seeing them and seeing kind of how, they fit in to the picture that was going on?
I didn't make much of that because, there's other, without getting into other topics, right? There's a set of files that the Justice Department released that, one of the major accomplices was a woman. So that's all I'm saying is that there's not a surprise for me there. One thing that I want to just speak to what you were on is, because you're right, the idea of infrastructure in society for young men. I think you're right.
Well, but for everybody, that. But young men would benefit.
Well,
also.
But let me get on the point you made, because you threw out a good challenge to me to think about it. And you're right. It's unfair for me to compare how maybe I thought and project my own self as a younger man. First of all, I didn't have any issues with my mom. I had a very good relationship with my mother. So I know some men that have sideways relationships with their moms, like the guy from Baton Rouge who was in the documentary, who mentioned that his mom was strung out on drugs a lot, all this kind of stuff. So there could be a resentment that develops towards women, all that stuff. So I can't appreciate that. That's not me. The second thing is, I always kind of had a growth mindset. I was always hungry as a younger man. I always wanted to learn. I read books at a young age. So my point is that, I didn't have this thing that someone else was on top of me not being able to make it how I thought I would make it. I was just excited, just bursting out of high school and getting into the real world and all that stuff. So
hey man, I can sum
it's a different
this up,
mindset.
In fact, I did sum this up. Your life is the embodiment of a hustler's ambition, man. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that is it. And so, but here's the thing. But I was playing basketball in high school and in college, meaning there were other tracks I had that kept me going in a sense. So I don't know what it's like to literally be that kid that graduates high school and is still sitting in his mom's basement by 23. I don't know what that's like. So one thing that I was going to say, though, is the one thing I've always advocated for in the United States, if we want to talk about infrastructure, would be the idea, and some other countries do this, which is national service. That after 18, after high school, that young women and men, but in this case, we're talking about young men, go into, the service, go into boot camp, not for them to go to war and all that, but like you're saying, camaraderie, collaboration with others, learning how to trust. You do all those drills in boot camp, self-esteem, getting in shape, like you're saying, and then hopefully not going to war, but there's a lot of skills one can learn. You can be an aircraft mechanic. You can learn how to fix tanks. You can be in intelligence on the computers. There's a lot of things young people can learn in the military. So when they're 23, 24, 25, they're coming out to the rest of society with some skills and also a mindset
and confidence
of doing something. And so that's what I think. But, well,
let me say this.
I don't know.
With that, because you sound, I think that your wish might be granted towards the end of this year if you're not careful. I think that, but I agree with you, national service. But I don't think national service should mean military, though. National service can be anything. Like, we should have a roaming
Peace Corps
group.
To me is fine. Yeah.
Well, we should have a roaming group of people that go around building houses or something that work. That's part of a national service. Or there's a lot of things that you can do for the nation. If you got to give 2-3 years of national service, go teach somewhere, go do this and that. That would be something. Exactly. All of those benefits, also just reinforcing that we're all in this together. That's something that I think that you can't hold a nation together long if people don't look at it they're in together. The whole point of a nation is to kind of look at it, you're in it together. That's kind of what you're doing here. And so you're trying to use religion to try to hold that. If it's a nation that's not built on a religion, it's difficult. If it's trying to use a race to do that, if it's a nation that's not built on a single race, it's difficult to do that. And actually it's counterproductive, because then you're excluding all this talent that you have there too. Hey, well, we don't want to use all your talents. We'll just use this small set of talent or this group of talent. And it's well, why would we not want to use all this? So it creates these issues. To me, though, I want to comment on the women piece. It was very interesting to me to see that, in the sense that it wasn't surprising, but I think my biggest gripe with the Manosphere, generally speaking, is the selling that there's only one way that things have to happen. And so, like, seeing the women in there, if some women like that, cool. If they really like it and they're not being there against their will, or if chasing the clout or getting more subscribers or whatever is important to them, and they'll go and take a little humiliation in order to get more guys to be there, or maybe they don't even see it as humiliation, like that. I don't have a problem with that if that's what they want to do, but my issue goes into where someone then says that everybody has to be like this. Everybody has to be, a woman that can't vote, or, a trad wife, or whatever it be. No, like, the women who want to do that should be able to do that. The women who want to do something else should be able to do that. And same thing with the guys that want to be tough, masculine, be in the gym. I'm good with that. I love going to the gym. The guys that want to, all of that. And the guys who don't, figure out your lane, figure out another lane for you, and whatever that is, but it's the idea of forced uniformity, that simplicity to me, or this is the only way to get it done, this is the only way to do it, is where that's where I don't bite, and to sell it in that way, like, hey, if this appeals to you, and then using all these images to be like, hey, this will appeal to you, you'll have all these girls if you come be like me. It to me, that's disingenuous. That sounds a lot like, you turn on sports radio and then in the morning, on Sunday morning or something like that, and they got all these guys, these gambling experts, so they'll be like, yeah, if you subscribe to my thing, I'll give you all these gambling tips and you'll make a bunch of money. And it's like, well, actually, you subscribing to them gives them a bunch of money. And then if they were making a bunch of money, they wouldn't need your subscription. They'd be over there just doing stuff on their own. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that hustle, or these business, hey, I'll teach you how to invest. Just pay me this and then you'll get all this money. It's like, it comes off as that to me, like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna teach you the one way to do this. And, it's unfortunate because, like I said, the people that are most likely to be drawn into it are the people that are the most vulnerable in that sense. So I feel bad for the guys being drawn in more than anything. If anybody's helped, if discipline gets through, great. If taking pride in yourself gets through, then great. But the other stuff they're selling, like they can miss me with that. I don't see it as being a prerequisite to being strong, to being a man.
Yeah, that's where, and I'll kind of start ending my comments here, because that goes back to what you said exactly is what I felt in the beginning of this conversation when I said, use the term grift, but I didn't want to lead with that because I knew that it was more complex than that. But that the part you're on is where I feel the grift is, and where I see it so similar. And I think it is because of the internet, just the new information networks, because as you're talking just now, think about it. We have, and I don't want to go on a tangent, it's just an example. We have a president now who, when he came into office at the beginning of January 2025 in the second term, had a meme coin. And they raised $2 billion from, I guess, people investing in this meme coin. 75 people made money. 813,000 people lost $2 billion. So that was a transfer of wealth, which was kind of like a snake oil guy back in the late 1800s traveling through the Midwest.
But that means that it's not the internet. That, like, this is a human impulse. These guys that sell these, I'm sure you're a wealth advisor. You see these people that go around telling, hey, buy this seminar and you're going to be a master trader.
Or buy gold on certain news channels in the day when they know old people are being there watching them and they scare them about the stock market. I see it all. And that's my point James is saying. It seems like
that's not you and I grew up in. That's not just the internet.
Well, what I'm getting at is, let me just finish the point. What I'm getting at is there was a certain infrastructure and hierarchy of communication when you and I were growing up, meaning the industrial age of the broadcast TVs, radios. So there was a lot of gatekeepers. Not everyone could just get in and sell their wares through those systems. The internet kind of broke that open. That's what I mean, is that a lot of more people have voices and a lot of things, because even things like broadcast rules and all that, now you can communicate with everybody and you don't have to follow broadcast rules, right? Those are things you couldn't do 50 years ago. So that's what I'm just saying, is that it seems like we're in this wild west of communications, and this manosphere thing, again, just me saying, me looking into this sphere here was kind of like, okay, this way that certain young men now are culturally talking about women and how to do this, seems like some guys have figured out a grift. And they're just saying, come follow me and you'll get all this, kind of like some people in politics, like I just mentioned. And then those people end up just fleecing people. And in other parts, they're creating this grievance where some other young men are saying, well, everything, maybe they're not paying and giving these guys money, but they're getting this indoctrination that they're victims, and that the reason why they're victims is because of women, because women doing well. That's part of this DEI pushback is some of the gender stuff. Women in positions of CEO, women being astronauts, women being fighter pilots, somehow is keeping the guy in his basement from doing what he wants to do. Well, and I just think it's that grievance.
Well, the issue that I have with that, and you're correct in that, like I would agree with you in that sense. And the issue that I have with that is that the first lesson, if you want to empower someone to improve in their life, the first message you got to give them is that stop looking outside at other things. Start looking inside as far as how you can change your own behavior to get to what you're trying to get to. And so if your first move is to look at what somebody else has and get mad about that and have grievances about that, you're cutting your legs out already, And so it's like, again, that's why I came away from it feeling bad about the people that are getting these messages, or feeling bad for them, not to absolve them of any bad thing that they do because they have these messages or whatever. But it's just like, oh man, like, and again, I think that the problem, the rigging, I believe it. Now again, when I look at the society being rigged, I'm just looking at, well, who's winning, whose wealth may grow by $600 billion over the course of a year, and not doing anything different. That's probably who I'm looking at, probably rigging stuff, but that aside, I agree with that, but
he's cool. Because he's got 100 kids, right? That's the Manosphere. He's cool.
Hey, well, to your point, if you buy, Twitter, then you be whatever you want to be.
Control the algorithm.
You control the algorithm at that point. But yeah, so to me, it was just like, oh man, like the problem is real, and these people are being walked down a path that will only make it worse for them, to the benefit of these people that are walking him down the path. So it's unfortunate.
But I got to say this. I'm sorry, man, because we're about to start another show. Because when you said internalizing, I started thinking of Buddhism. And I thought, we're going to have a problem because them 3 Abrahamic religions don't really go for internalization. It's all about the devil. It's something external as to why my life is not good, and not about
or why my
me becoming
temptation
enlightened.
Is here. No, you're right.
Yeah, not me enlightening myself from within and challenging myself. And so, yeah, we might be in a,
hey, well, you're well on your way. I know you mentioned it recently. You are well on your way to your theocracy that you're going to start for yourself.
Yeah, but if I start a Buddhist theocracy, then I can't control everyone. That's the problem.
But so you're working out the kinks, man. You're working out the kinks.
Yeah.
So,
we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Till next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk soon.